we're ready to move on to this teal crayon. So since this crayon is tilted this way, the light is going to be more down the middle, and there's not really a highlight much in the middle, but there is reflected light on either side. And I do see a highlight back here. It's dark across the edges, but yeah, this part of the crayon itself, probably because it's cone shaped and it's kind of turned down, is pointing away from the light. So it doesn't really have a highlight on it to speak of, but I do see just a little bit of reflected light out here. So as usual, I'm going to mix some color right out here. I'm starting with the Hansa yellow, and I'm going to mix some blue into that. Let me water that down just a little bit. That right there looks pretty good, but I am going to add just a smidge of blue back to it. I'm going to just cover the whole thing with some clear water and then let it sit, get settled, go from a high glossy shiny shine to more of a satin finish. And this wrapper on this particular crayon is really, really light. And to be honest, the part that's right here in the center is probably about where it needs to be in order to have it the right color for how bright it's going to be, the highlight. So what I'm going to do is just get the wrapper part of the crayon wet again. Now you will notice, I don't think I've mentioned this so far, but once you get your original layer of water on your paper and then you do a wash of color, you're going to find that when you wet your paper again after that, that it is going to sink in and get a little bit drier and evaporate faster. If you look at my palette over here, you'll see that my paint is kind of getting dry. That is where I want it to be, because when I put paint, wet paint onto wet paper, if my paint is a drier consistency than the surface of the paper, then it's going to be more likely to stay in one spot for me. I'm going to just lightly take the very last few little bristles, hairs on my brush, and I am going to kind of drag that color up toward the center just a little bit, because I want a little smoother transition between where it curves over the edge and gets a little bit darker and where it comes up into the center and is lighter. So when I look at these two, I feel like we're at a good spot with this crayon as far as the value on it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, first of all, pick up my paper towel that I dropped on the floor, take my eradicator brush, and I want to come down through here and lighten this a little bit more. I thought it was going to be light enough, but I feel like I could do a little bit more. I'm just moving my brush in little circles and then kind of working my way left and right across the crayon so that I get a better blend of the highlight. As a matter of fact, this color seems to be lifting fairly easy. I'm going to try my regular brush and see if that's, I'm going to go back to the eradicator. It's working a little bit faster. If you don't have an eradicator brush or some type of a scrubbing brush, then you can use your regular paintbrush. It's not an issue. It might just take you a little bit longer to get the color lifted out than if you did have a brush that's meant for lifting. So I've pretty much got this about where it needs to be, but I am going to take my other brush and I'm going to try to soften these edges just a wee little bit more. And then again, just going to lift all of that up. A thicker consistency of the blue. And then I'm going to get some of the yellow. And I want to keep it looking pretty much the same, but I want it to be a little bit bluer and a thicker consistency so that when I paint it on, I can get a nice dark color. So this is my size 2 Rosemary & Co. And this is the 344 series brush. I'm going to leave a little space in between these two dark areas so that I can let them kind of settle in a little bit and then come back with a wet brush and soften the edges out. I'm coming over here just into the blue and I'm picking up a very sticky, thick mixture of just that blue. And I'm going to drop that in right out here along the outside edge just to darken that up a little bit. Now this is starting to settle, so my brush is very lightly damp. And I'm just pulling those two colors in to meet in the middle as I'm creating that little highlight. See there? Easy breezy. Now let's come down here to this end of the crayon. And I'm going to paint the cone part separate from the, I'm just calling it the barrel. I don't know what else to call this part of the crayon. But basically I'm going to do the same thing that I just did, and that I'm going to paint Okay, I can start painting on the stripes. I'm just going to start here. And because this crayon, the wrapper is quite a bit lighter, let me see, let me think about this for a moment. No, I'm just going to go ahead and do it the same way that I've been doing the rest. And then I'm going to paint the whole thing in and then just lift the highlight back out. I feel like this is dry enough now that I can go ahead and get the rest of this crayon painted in. So let's see. I need a little bit darker. Definitely needs to go darker. Adding more blue in there. I started running out of paint, so this mixture is not quite dark enough. I am going to grab a little more of my blue. Then on the very end of that crayon, remember I said that it's kind of dark? So I'm taking just a little bit of super dry neutral tint, and I'm dropping that in right there on the very end of that crayon. And now I'm looking, because this does have a little bit of reflected light over here. So I'm going to lift a little bit of color out. Doesn't have to be a lot, just because this crayon, the crayon part of it, is darker than the rest because, as I was saying, it's away from the light. So this is what we have right now. We still need to put shadows in. Before I do, I'm going to get this crayon all the way dry. So I'm going to do a little cleanup, do a little drying, and then when I come back, I think I'll put the shadows in the very last lesson. And then we'll do any final touch-ups that needs to be done in that last lesson as well. So for now, we're going to call the blue crayon done, and we'll come back to the next lesson to do all the final touches. I'll see you there.